All right, hi everyone. We'll go ahead and get started now. I'm sure a few more people will join us shortly, but it's really lovely to welcome you all here today. My name's Jamie Smith. I'm the Graduate Top Programs Manager here at the Faculty of Laws at UCL, and I'll be hosting today's open day. We've got a range of panelists with us here today as well, so you can hear from different perspectives from people within the faculty. And depending on where you're at in your journey, whether you're an applicant or you're still thinking about putting in an application, perhaps you're an offer holder as well, hopefully you'll find today useful to hear a bit more from us about the faculty and understand a bit more of what to expect from the LLM, and also give you an opportunity to ask us any questions that you might have at this stage to help progress your application or your journey with the program. So again, very warm welcome to everybody. We'll go ahead and get started with some brief introductions, and then we have a few presentations, and then we'll follow up at the end with plenty of time for Q&A. If in the meantime, if you want to start populating some questions for us to answer later, you should see at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button. That's where you should put any questions that you have. We'll be going through those and trying to answer as many as we can live, and also by text as well. We have some colleagues supporting to answer by message as well for some of your questions. So yeah, feel free to start populating questions there now. We won't start answering them for a little while yet, but if you've got anything kind of pressing in your head, you can put those down for now. So I think we'll go ahead and start off with introductions. Firstly, we've got on the call today Sarah Campling, who is our program director. So go ahead, Sarah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our open day. Thank you so much for coming. As Jamie says, I'm the program director for the LLM. So if you decide to study with us, my role would be to support you through your LLM from admissions through to the induction week, your taught modules and assessments, and hopefully to a really happy conclusion and to graduation day. So thank you very much for coming and joining us today.
Thank you, Sarah. Next up, we have Penn, one of our academic staff members.
Thank you, Jamie. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to extend my welcome to you as well. My name is Penn. As you can see, I'm Professor of International Finance Law at UCL. I teach international finance, corporate finance, and I'm familiar with many of the corporate and mergers and acquisitions related topics that we teach on the various courses. I'm also a full-time practitioner in the city, and I'll be talking about that in a few moments in terms of how practice and the academic side are combined in the way that we deliver the courses at UCL. So,
excellent, thank you, Graham. Next up, we have Rachel Knowles from our Centre for Access to Justice.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel. I'm the head of legal practice at the UCL Centre for Access to Justice. I'm responsible for all of our organising all of our pro bono activities and partnerships, and I also run our legal advice clinic out in Stratford, where we have students working on placement. I'm also a solicitor in practice, and I specialise in community care and educational law.
Excellent, thank you, Rachel. And we're very lucky today to have two current LLM students with us as well. First up, we have Emily.
Hi there, my name's Emily, and as Jamie said, I'm a current LLM student, and I'm also the secretary in the Graduate Law Society.
And Pere.
Hello everyone, my name is Pere. I'm from Nigeria, and I'm also a current general LLM student. I am also the EDI, Officer of the Graduate Law Society. It's good to have you all here.
Excellent, thank you so much. Great, we'll go ahead and get the session started. First up, we've got a sort of introductory session from Graham. He's got a few slides to share, so hopefully you enjoy this next presentation. So go ahead, Graham.
Thank you. I will try and be something other than a Luddite for once and share my screen. I'm hoping this is working. Can you all see that? I hope you can. Yes, okay, well, welcome again, everyone. When Jamie says I've got a few slides, I've got a large number of slides. What I would say, I'm going to rush through this, and if people would like to have a look at these slides afterwards, I hope you will. we'll send them over to you. So what I'm going to do here is try to give you a sense of the way in which the courses we teach at UCL, particularly in the corporate and finance arena, but I'm sure this is the same elsewhere, are really bang up to date and very exciting, much more exciting than ever used to be the case. So I'm going to be looking specifically at the impact that the most recent global financial crisis and the, I suppose, what is still the ongoing COVID pandemic has had in the world of big law, the world of big international finance and corporate M&A. So I think that the bottom line is everything is exciting and it's hot in this new world in which we live today, because the corporate world and the finance world has been so affected by these two recent crises. This is an indication of me, that's me in the middle there, a few years ago, when international finance was considered to be about the most boring thing anyone could do in the world. We were required to dress in white coats, as you see, and left to work in basements. No one was remotely interested in international finance law. We had no friends, no one wanted to talk to us, life was extremely dull, and then everything changed. We had the global finance crisis just over 10 years ago, and we became Hollywood box office. I'm being mildly facetious here, but not entirely. If my children had ever believed that Christian Bale and Brad Pitt would appear in a film doing the stuff that their dad does at work, they would never have believed it, but it is. There have been a number of films about the crisis and films currently being made about the impact of the pandemic. Books were written and everyone wanted to talk about it. We became the most invited people to parties. Everyone wanted to know about global finance, about corporate finance, about private equity, and about the impact that that was having on them. This had never happened before. And why is that? Well, many of these issues you will have heard about. If you read any quality newspaper, you will have come across these phrases. LIBOR, which I'll be talking about in more detail, which is the mechanism that is used to price all debt worldwide. And I'm not just talking about big finance debt. I mean, if you have a credit card, if you have a student loan, if you've ever bought a car, everything really is priced on the back of LIBOR. Securitization is a word that you might not be that familiar with, but securitization is really how we fund much of the real economy. And as we come out of the COVID crisis and government rescue packages are relaxed, it's going to be absolutely critical for both large and small businesses to get access to financing. And that is difficult these days because banks are still struggling to cope with the effects of the most recent global finance crisis in 2008, 2009. And the regulators are actually quite reluctant to allow them to lend at the levels that are required. So the bottom line is that that means that alternative forms of debt finance need to be created, and securitization is one of those. And that's problematic as we come out of the pandemic. NPLs, you may have heard about, these are non-performing loans. There are a lot of those out there at the moment, as you might imagine. Many businesses have been affected by the ongoing pandemic. And again, as those businesses come out of the challenges that they've been facing, they are going to struggle to service the debt that they have available. So how that is going to be dealt with is an ongoing and interesting problem. One of the most interesting issues, however, are the issues I cover in the next two of these sections. The emergence of the shadow banking sector and the increasing importance of private equity. All of you will have heard about these. The world really now seems to be the oyster for the private equity firms. And these are firms that are not just becoming more active because they are acquiring businesses that may or may not be in distress, but these historic private equity platforms, these big businesses, are doing different things these days. And that includes providing debt finance to the market. So some of the biggest providers of debt finance today are private equity platforms that now are known as multi-strategy platforms. And they are, in my opinion, only going to become even more active in the next 5-10 years. That has led on to a boom in leveraged finance. You know, in the good old days, companies were acquired by equity. The amount of equity that is put into the market these days is relatively small. It's actually about 20% of the finance that's made available, and the rest is debt. and much of that finance is called leveraged finance. And there are many legal and regulatory issues arising in all of these and in many others that have yet to be resolved. So it's a fascinating time to be looking at these issues, a fascinating time, frankly, to be a lawyer in this area. I only have time today. I literally just have 10 or 15 minutes to talk to you, 10 minutes now, to look at one of them. And I thought that I would look at the one that you're likely to be most familiar with, just because it's in the press almost every day, and this is LIBOR. I would have struggled to even know what that number is, but believe it or not, that number is 350 trillion. 350 trillion is a very big number, and it's multiples of the gross domestic product of the entire planet. I mean, it is that big. That is the number of the value of contracts which are governed by LIBOR. So this is a very, very significant number. What is LIBOR? LIBOR is basically the way that we price debt in the market. It is effectively, the market cost of money. This is a diagram that's trying to show you how a loan is made available over a period of 5 years. And over that 5-year period, LIBOR will go up and down. It's all part of the interest rate mechanism. And it then changes the interest rate on worldwide debt contracts. As I say, I'm talking about debt contracts. It could be at one end of the spectrum, something as simple as a credit card debt. So if you have credit cards, the interest that you pay is ultimately linked to the market cost of money. The market cost of money is LIBOR. You go to the other end of the spectrum and complicated debt finance arrangements that are entered into by companies, bond issues, syndicated loans, and everything between those two spectrums, so car loans, mortgages, student loans, as I say, are all priced off the back of LIBOR. So this is a really, really important interest rate mechanism. Incredibly, until the LIBOR crisis, which happened only about 4 or 5 years ago, the number of transactions that were taken from the market, which were then used to price this 350 trillion of debt in the market, was priced off only 500 million or less of underlying transactions. So this is a pyramid, an inverse pyramid, that's trying to just show you how that very large body of debt is actually calculated by reference to a very small number of contracts, daily contracts that are taking place. What was the significance of that? Well, the significance of that was that it was open to manipulation. And that is precisely what happened. LIBOR was manipulated for a period of time in the market, and that was unknown for many years. The regulators and others became aware of it a few years ago, and various investigations were launched looking into what had been going on. Those investigations recognized that this benchmark, which at the time was totally unregulated, needed to change. For a period of 2 or 3 years, between 2012 to 2014, the market looked at ways in which it could improve the benchmark, which it could improve the way that LIBOR was calculated that would prevent it being manipulated in the future. In parallel with that, regulatory authorities throughout the world, typically central banks, were then appointed to oversee LIBOR going forward. And it is incredible to think that only 4, 5, 6 years ago, we had a benchmark that really governed the price of debt throughout the world that was totally unregulated. I confess I look back now and it seems to me mind-boggling that that was the case. It didn't seem it at the time, but it does on reflection. The fact that this was going to be regulated really did change the approach. And although the regulators throughout the world seemed, at least initially, to be quite willing to allow the market to look at ways in which they could change and improve the problem benchmark, it soon became clear that that was going to be very difficult. And it was going to be very difficult primarily because the way in which the market operated had fundamentally changed as a consequence of the global finance crisis. Before the global finance crisis, banks were considered to be strong. Banks very, very rarely became insolvent. And so the whole market was based on the idea that banks lent money to each other. What happened, of course, as a consequence of the global finance crisis is that changed. We had banks all over the world that were going into insolvency and getting into serious financial difficulty. And the legacy of that is still with us today for lots of reasons. One thing that has changed probably forever is this idea that banks cannot fail. And banks do not lend to each other anymore. And that's the problem with this market. So we have moved from a market where we still use LIBOR based on banks giving these quotes to each other to one in which that market doesn't operate. And so what the regulator wanted was a market that was based on real transactions. So if we were going to have an interest rate mechanism that applied to the world debt markets, that needed to be based on real transactions. And that was not available. So what the market has been doing since the crisis is looking at ways in which we can set up a new benchmark. And the regulator made clear that that needed to be done. And the regulator's initial timetable for that was that that needed to be done by the end of December 2021, just a couple of months ago. So the plan was that LIBOR, the mechanism that had been used to price debt in the markets for over 50 years, was going to be coming to an end at the end of 2021 and replaced with something else. Now, what it was going to be replaced with was not clear, and different approaches were taken in different parts of the world. There were basically 5 major currencies that were looking at this. The US dollar, obviously, the Swiss franc, the euro, the GBP, and the yen. And each of those adopted a slightly different approach to the new benchmark, as we call it, that was going to replace LIBOR. And that has a profound impact on the market. And where we are today now is an interest rate mechanism that differs depending upon which market you choose. But LIBOR, interestingly, has not yet come to an end. The markets were not able to shift from one that used LIBOR that was well known and well understood to a market that used a different benchmark. So where we are today is a world in which LIBOR does still apply to a number of contracts. It's a reducing number of contracts, but there are still many that are governed by LIBOR. And the way that LIBOR is calculated is quite different. I don't have time today to go into this, but if you'd like to look at the notes afterwards, I do go into that in some detail. That is being reduced, that market, that LIBOR market is being reduced at the same time that there is an increase in the market for these new benchmarks that relate to the US dollar, that relate to the Japanese yen, that relate to the euro. And those differences are going to have a profound impact on the way that debt finance is made available. So what does this mean in the case of big law? What does it mean in the case of large corporate acquisitions, large debt finance transactions? Well, what it means is that we are seeing these changes occur, as I speak. I mean, each day there is a significant development that takes place that has an impact not only on the price of debt, but on the nature of the transactions that are entered into. Most large corporate transactions need debt in some way, whether it's because we're buying a company or establishing a business or just for day-to-day capital needs. And the legal implications of those capital needs are very, very significant indeed. So if you were going to study these courses at UCL, what you would be undertaking in those studies is not just an understanding of the historic basis upon which the market is operated, but an understanding of the way in which the market is changing today. And I can't emphasize that enough. There are some very, very significant academic, if you like, theoretical legal issues that arise. Good examples I'm showing on this slide here. Have those LIBOR-based contracts been frustrated? Many of the contracts that I'm talking about were entered into for 15, 20 years. And this LIBOR crisis that I've just been talking about was never contemplated, obviously, when those contracts were entered into. Moving away from LIBOR to something else is going to be different. And whenever a contract changes and it's different, there will be positives for one of the parties and negatives. And so we're not moving to a situation where there's a like-for-like change. So that if the parties are able to sit down and negotiate a new contract, that's all fine. But of course, that's going to be quite challenging because one is invariably going to be the winner and one is going to be the loser. So have these contracts been frustrated? Are they subject to force majeure? Do they include mechanisms that enable the parties to move from one pricing mechanism, the interest rate that we apply, to something else? Generally not. And so there are some really quite significant legal issues that arise if this problem is not fixed. So that gives you a sense of the sort of legal issues that arise. Then we talk about the market issue. What is the significance of this in the context of how debt is made available in the market? And I'm not just talking about big finance debt. It could be something as simple as I said earlier, as credit card debt, as mortgage debt, any form of debt. And how is that being restructured and how is that being addressed? And finally, what is the significance of this in relation to the dramatic changes that are taking place in the world economy with regard to the provision of debt, particularly as we come out of the COVID crisis? As I said earlier, we're not in a world any longer where banks are particularly strong and able to fund the real economy. We need to look at other ways in which we can do that. Now, when we're looking at alternative providers of debt finance, how are they going to price their debt as well? So all of these issues are addressed in the courses that you will be studying at UCL. And not only do we talk about the theoretical issues and the practical issues that I've just been talking about in relation to the market, but we also look at the documentation that is being developed to address these issues. Anyway, I hope that's given you a taster of the approach that we take, and I hope you are keen to come and join the party. Anyway, that's enough for me now. I will hand over back to Jamie.
Excellent, thanks so much, Graham. Moving on, we next up have a presentation from Sarah, just to give you a bit more information about applying to the LLM and the programme in general. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Jamie, and thank you, Graham, for that fantastic speech. Hopefully, I am now going to share my screen and you're going to see my presentation. I'm hoping you can see that, and if you can't, I'm hoping somebody will tell me. Thank you very much that you can't. So thanks so much for coming to our open day. I'm Sarah Campling, as I said earlier. I'm the Director of Graduate Talk Programmes. That means I'm the LLM Director. And for my first slide, you see a fabulous photograph of the main quad at UCL, which is the building that you might even be taught some of your classes in, should you decide to study an LLM with us. But I'm moving swiftly, says she, swiftly on to the Faculty of Laws. This is the home of UCL Laws, the home of the LLM. In the Faculty of Laws, you will meet and see lots of world-leading academics and practitioners like Graham. You've just heard from Professor Graham Penn. He's given you a taster of the kind of high-quality, amazing teaching that you can expect at UCL. And I would strongly recommend that you have a look at the CVs on the website of our academics and practitioners who will teach you on the LLM, because they're pretty impressive. And those people are also carrying out very, very important research, which helps shape government policy, both nationally and internationally. So you're taught by amazing people. The other really good thing about the LLM at UCL is that it's at the heart of legal London. We're in the middle of London. So if you become a student and you want to spend an afternoon observing a case in the Royal Courts of Justice or the United Kingdom Supreme Court, you can go there, sit in the back, observe a case. And also, of course, we've got everything that London has to offer. So London's an amazing city. As well as being in the middle of London, we have a really friendly ethos at UCL Laws. So the law students support each other. You'll see academics around the building, people talk to each other, really friendly and supportive. On the LLM itself, we have about 350 students, and it's a really diverse student group. So those students come from about 60 different countries. So in the classroom, you'll share the class with people from all around the world, which will really help your teaching experience. And you will also probably be sharing the course with the classroom with people who are already qualified. Some people are already qualified. Some people come straight from undergraduate university. Some people have been a practicing lawyer in a particular area for many years and want to change their career. So a really diverse group of students. So why do our students study a Master of Laws with us? Well, there are many reasons, because we have such a diverse student body. But usually it's because a student will want to specialise in a particular area of law. So they might want to delve deeper into international law or into environmental law, intellectual property law, competition law. Most of you will have done an undergraduate degree, which includes mostly compulsory modules. So you haven't been free to study the areas of law that particularly inspire you. On a Master of Laws, you can do that. Some students want to go on to become a solicitor or a barrister. Some students want to go on to become policymakers. Some wish to study for a PhD and see the LLM as a stepping stone for a PhD. Some wish to teach, and some aren't quite sure what they want to do next. So they've done an undergraduate degree in law and they want a year to develop their legal knowledge and legal skills and some time to reflect and think what's next. So why should you study at UCL? Why come to UCL? Well, if you've looked at our range of specialisms, you will see we have a huge range, both of specialisms, 13 specialisms next year, and of modules, approximately 50 modules next year. So whether your thing is legal history, jurisprudence, human rights, banking law, corporate law, competition law, intellectual property law, we have a specialism that will inspire you. And we also have a huge range of modules. It's really important to look at the modules and the content of the modules when you're choosing which LLM to study, because you need to know what you're going to be studying when you're here. Also, we offer you the opportunity to do a research essay. So part of the LLM is a research essay, which means that you can study something that you're particularly interested in. So you spend 10 months of the programme researching, studying and writing a research essay. And I say 10 months because the interesting thing about the LLM, one of the interesting things about the LLM at UCL, is that it's a 10-month programme and not a 12-month programme. So you finish at the end of June. That's unusual. Most LLMs are 12 months. And that gives you the opportunity to enter the job market early, gives you the opportunity to enrol on summer internships, or if you want to do something else during the summer, if you may want to do some travelling, gives you the summer to do what you want to do rather than studying over the summer. So it's a 10-month programme. Think about whether that's what you want to do. As well as the taught modules and the research essay, there's a whole host of extracurricular activities which are available. We'll talk about the Graduate Law Society in a minute, but there's also an academic legal writing course that you can follow in order to hone your academic legal writing skills. If you're interested in getting involved in a project on technology and law, you could get involved in Law Without Walls and work with students from across the world. If academic journals are your thing, you might want to get some experience of writing and editing on the UCL Journal of Law and Jurisprudence. We're going to hear from Rachel in a minute about the opportunities at the Centre for Access to Justice. But if you're an international lawyer and you want to get some experience of international law in practice, there's an award-winning public international law pro bono project which is available. And always during the course of the academic year, there are lectures and activities going on in the faculty. Though last year, lots of those have been on, the majority of them have been online. We hope in the future that they're more likely to be face-to-face. So the Graduate Law Society, a great opportunity to get involved with the faculty, variety of different members. Pere and Emily are here today from the Graduate Law Society, so I hope you'll ask them some questions about their experience of running for and being involved in the Graduate Law Society. Over the years, the Society has arranged different activities. It's arranged balls, it's had talks from practitioners, it sometimes goes to the pub, all sorts of things happen arranged by the Graduate Law Society. We're really lucky at UCL Laws as well, in that we have our own dedicated careers consultant who is dedicated to laws careers, so he can give you bespoke advice about your law career. How do you apply? The deadline's the end of March, the 31st of March. In order to apply, you must complete and submit written work as well as the application form. So that's quite unusual as well. You need to think about writing a piece of written work as well as completing your application form and your personal statement there. What are we looking for? Well, we're looking for a good 2-1, and that means an average of 65% across all years of study, or an international equivalent. Now, if you don't quite meet a good 2-1, we will look at your application, your personal statement, your written work, and your reference to look for evidence of motivation to study the course, also analytical and reasoning ability and communication skills. And if we think that you've shown sufficient evidence of those, we'll make an offer. So what should you write in your personal statement on the application form? Well, you can look on the website as to what we're expecting to hear from you. Basically, we'd like to know why you want to study law at graduate level. You are probably an undergraduate at this stage, so we'd like to know why you want to study at postgraduate level, why at UCL Laws, how your background will meet the demands of the programme, how your LLM will help with your future professional ambitions. We'd like to know something about the modules that you're interested in studying. And if you want to study a particular specialism, you don't want to do the general LLM, why you'd like to follow that particular specialism, and also what field you're considering exploring in your research essay. So our students go on to do a variety of different roles after the LLM. Some of them go on to be legal practitioners, some of them go on to study for a PhD, some of them go on to further study or to do professional courses. So these are an example of some of the places that students have gone on to after studying the LLM with us. If you have questions about the course, and I'm sure that you will have, we are going to answer some of your questions at the end of the session today. But if you don't get the opportunity to have your question answered today, then please do email our amazing laws admissions team. They're really helpful, really friendly, and they will be able to answer any questions that you have about the LLM. So thank you very much for listening. I'll hand you back now to Jamie.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sarah, for that detailed information. I'm sure we'll have some follow-up questions about applications and the program shortly. Next up, we have a presentation from Rachel, so you can learn a bit more about the Centre for Access to Justice and pro bono opportunities within the faculty. So thank you, Rachel.
Great. Can I just check, am I more audible now? Yes, okay, great. Perfect. I am just going to start to share my screen. I say this optimistically. Okay. Perfect. Okay. I'm hoping everyone can see these. So yes, I'm here to talk to you very briefly about the Centre for Access to Justice at UCL and what the things that we do and the opportunities available for students whilst you're at UCL. So first of all, I guess the question is, what is pro bono and why do it? The main reason why you should do pro bono is, I guess, twofold. The first is that it's as students, you're in a really unique opportunity to give back to the community and provide support and use your skills that you're learning on your degree to support the local community, whilst at the same time getting really great experience. So it's both a benefit for you and it's also a benefit for the community. And it kind of give you invaluable opportunities for your future career, and people who didn't know that you can find out about areas of law and activities that you maybe didn't even know existed before you started doing the placement. Certainly, I know that a lot of the people who volunteered with us have suddenly decided they want to become housing lawyers after being placed at the clinic. And what is the Centre for Access to Justice? So we are a kind of research centre / teaching centre / pro bono organising centre within the law faculty, and we coordinate and plan a lot of pro bono activities for our students, both undergraduate and postgraduate. We teach on undergraduate and postgraduate courses on issues relating to access to justice, and we also offer legal advice to the community in the form of our clinic, which is based out in Stratford. I've already answered that question. Yes, I've already sort of answered this as well. So we're a unit in the Faculty of Laws. We were launched in 2013, so we're almost coming up to our 10th birthday. And we try to promote access to justice through research-led teaching and activities. In terms of we think of it as 3 arms. So we have student engagement and opportunities. So we have our pro bono program, which I'll tell you a bit more about in detail on the next slide. We also run events which might raise awareness around particular issues or particular areas of law. We also have our student pro bono committee, where students actually can also get involved in event planning and also contributing to the activities that we run at the centre. We teach both an undergraduate and a postgraduate module on access to justice. The LLM module is called Access to Justice Theory and Practice, which Emily did this year, so she can tell you anything about it that if you've got questions about that. And we also provide legal advice at our Stratford clinic. We are the only university clinic at the moment who have a legal aid contract, so we're able to provide both pro bono and legal aid advice and give students a kind of experience of working across a range of issues. So in terms of the pro bono program that we offer, at the moment we've got around 15 projects running, and there's a sort of huge variety of activities. So there are things from you can work in an advice agency. We've got a therapeutic advocacy placement where you can be working alongside therapists and psychologists and social workers, offering advocacy to families. We have placements at the University of London Refugee Law Clinic. We have placements involving delivering workshops to schools about human rights. You can also obviously be placed at our clinic in Stratford. We have partnerships with other advice clinics and organisations. We also do some research work with justice. We're doing a research on magistrates, courts and bail applications at the moment. So there's a kind of, we add projects throughout the year as they come up, and you could also potentially create your own and offer to run that. So we have some projects which are student-led, and that might also have kind of things like amicus and junior lawyers against poverty, which kind of students have their own branch within UCL and they lead those projects and we support them in running those projects. So we're always open to starting new projects as well. With events, we run lots of different sorts of events. Obviously with COVID, we haven't been able to run so many in-person events, but hopefully that will be, we'll be able to increase on that next year, barring everything else. We teach people about public interest careers. We have run events in the past about kind of problems that the legal aid system has in the UK and all the crises, continuing crises to do with legal aid. The latest talk I think we've been planning at the moment is one around prisoners' rights. So it just sort of varies and it depends on people's interests and current events that are happening at the time. And the pro bono committee is run in part by undergraduate students, and I think there are also opportunities for postgraduate students to get involved with that and shape the work that we're doing at the centre. and participate in it. The clinic is based in Stratford, East London, and we give advice and representation on pro bono and legal aid cases in the areas of social welfare law. So that's welfare benefits work, housing work, education and community care law primarily. And students can get involved in a range of different activities and also help with kind of the day-to-day triage of clients and generally just dealing with the volume of inquiries we've got coming in. Last year, you can see we took on 123 new cases for 107 clients. That might be, you might see other clinics who take on a lot more cases, but they don't tend to provide the full service of advice all the way through to representation from the start to the end of a case. So those can take time, and we have some clients who come back to us with when they have repeat issues and repeat problems. So it's sort of long-term, but a higher level of outcome in terms of the support we're able to offer because we're able to invest time into each client. That is the end of my whistle-stop tour of the clinic, and I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Excellent, thank you so much, Rachel. I shall keep an eye out in the Q&A for any questions that come up specifically related to the Centre for Access to Justice. So yeah, just a reminder now, we'll be moving on to the question and answer session of the question and answer portion of this session. So if you've not already started populating any questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, please feel free to do that. We'll try and answer as many that we can live, but also we'll probably write back to you on a few if we can answer them directly or one-to-one by message. Great, so I've had a look through the questions that have come through so far. I've definitely seen a few, Sarah, always a hot topic. A few questions asking for more information about the written work component of the application. Quite a few attendees just looking for advice on how to structure it, how to make it concise because of the word length, any tips that you can share that would be useful.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. I'd just like to reassure people that we're not looking for a postgraduate thesis. We're not looking for anything hyper complicated. We're looking for a good, solid piece of work which allows us to judge whether you can write a coherent piece with, so that we can assess whether you have good analytical and reasoning ability skills and mostly good communication skills. So it doesn't have to be too complicated. Don't overcomplicate this piece of work. What we're expecting is basically something which sets out your views about a particular piece of particular legal topic that you might be interested in. You could just describe the area, and that may well be enough. We're always a little bit more impressed if you have an opinion or an angle about a particular legal area and that you're able to explain that. But there's nothing particularly complicated or special. We just wanted a piece of work that shows that you can think about and communicate an idea, a legal idea. Graham also helps me with the analysis of the applications. He might want to say something about what he looks for in a good piece of written work.
Yeah, just very briefly, I don't think I can really add very much to that, Sarah. You don't need to be erudite in this. I think we're looking for evidence of, frankly, just a good legal mind at work. So you're articulating something about a particular issue. This doesn't have to be massively complicated, but something that you're interested in. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I would just sort of focus on something you're interested in and explain why you're interested in it. I mean, obviously it being something that has some legal implications. So we're looking at analytical skills, as Sarah says, and an ability to write well.
Excellent, thank you both. There was a sort of follow-on question about whether or not the written work has to be in the field of their chosen specialism. My understanding is probably not, but given that it needs to be an area that you're interested in, it's most likely that your area of interest will probably be related to your specialist field that you're looking at. But any other thoughts on that, Sarah?
Yeah, it's likely that it will, but you might be looking to having done an undergraduate degree where you've studied compulsory subjects, you might be wanting to do a master's where you're specialising in an area that you haven't studied much of before. So it's absolutely fine if you want to write about an area that you studied at undergrad that you're not going to specialise in. It's fine. We won't keep you to the area that you write about.
Thanks, Sarah. Another question that we had, I think, is probably following on from Graham's presentation. This attendee had said, at the beginning, there was a mention of real-world experiences in collaboration with the education provided. How is this done? Is this available for the corporate finance law courses? Is that something that you're happy to expand on, Graham?
Yes, I'll try and keep it brief. When we talk about, I can speak about corporate finance and legal aspects of international finance, which I help teach, and also cross-border mergers and acquisitions. What I can say about each of those courses is that we involve people that are in the market. So, for example, on the corporate finance course, we involve someone that has been in the private equity world, and we have a seminar talking to them about the market, about where the market is and what the implications are for the lawyers. As I said earlier, in each of the courses that are involved, cross-border M&A, corporate finance and legal aspects, we use documentation that is currently available in the market. And by currently available, I mean that is changing as we speak. So by the time you come and take the course, if you do join us, you will be looking at documentation that is used in the market in 2022, 2023. All of the courses, I mean, I'm a practitioner myself, but all of the courses involve academics and practitioners. And in some cases, those practitioners actually may be industry people as well. So that's what I was talking about earlier in terms of the sort of business or market experience.
Excellent, thanks, Graham. We've had a couple of sort of similar questions, either about specialisms or modules for next year, that I think we can kind of answer in one go. There was definitely a few questions about whether or not the international law specialism is running for next year. So you can see our list of specialisms that we're offering on the website. I'll just ask my colleague Danielle to just share a link in the chat directly to that page. Unfortunately, international law is one specialism that won't be offered next year, but you may find that some courses from the specialism will end up being run. It's just that we cannot offer the entire specialism for students to apply to for next year. And there were other questions about specific modules being run for next year as well. At the moment, we're still confirming our list of modules for next year. That's something that we'll be publishing on the website in the next couple of months, probably late spring. And we will make sure that existing applicants and offer holders are aware whenever that list becomes available, so that you can see what modules are going to be offered generally and within each specialism as well. Moving on from that as well, we've had, unsurprisingly, Sarah, a question about teaching for next year. So will classes in the next academic year be taught face-to-face? I don't know, Sarah, you want to talk a little bit about preparations for that at the moment?
That's what we're hoping for. We're hoping that classes will be taught face-to-face next year. And in fact, the majority of classes have been taught face-to-face this year. So we can't predict the future. Subject to government guidance, of course. We are planning for the courses to be taught face-to-face next year. All I can say is fingers crossed.
Thanks, Sarah. I wondered as well, Graham, if you want to talk a bit, I know you're delivering a face-to-face lecture this year, how you found that compared to some of the online delivery that you've also been offering in previous years, and maybe we can hear from the students as well about the mixture of teaching that they've had on the program this year.
Yes, I'll keep this very brief. I confess I was not initially a big fan of online teaching, but having now taught it for 2 years, I really am. And this idea of mixing it, just to be clear what I mean by online. So the idea of giving people a laws class mini lecture in advance, directing their reading, directing their research in terms of the subject matter that's being covered. It's something I've never done before, and I found that incredibly helpful. So when we actually then do the face-to-face teaching, students are coming along, with a good idea of the subject matter, and it does mean that you can go into the issues in much, much greater detail. So I've enjoyed the mix, and I think that will continue. Yeah, I mean, I think there are certainly students that enjoy online teaching. I think the interaction that you can have face-to-face is bluntly preferable. I still prefer that if possible. And we can do that with tutorials as well. So as Sarah was saying, most of the teaching, even this last year, has been online. And as far as I'm aware, Sarah, all of the tutorials have been online. And frankly, most of the lectures have been too. We like to give students as much of a face-to-face experience as we possibly can, but I think part of the online experience that we have used, we will continue to use going forward because it really has been beneficial. I hope you agree, Emily, and Pere, to that, but anyway, you can comment too.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. Yeah, Pere, I wonder if you could speak a bit about the different classes that you're taking this year, the teaching delivery that's offered, and how you found that mix.
So I actually do have a mix of lectures in person and online. Frankly, I actually really enjoy the online sessions. I thought I wasn't going to, but it's actually like really been nice. It's been interactive as well. And then also the thing is, there are like tutorial sessions which are in person as well. So you still get that experience of a more personal experience, which is actually nice. But definitely I have enjoyed the hybrid nature of it all, honestly, because sometimes most of my lectures, I have them back to back, and some of them being online is actually more convenient for me to easily switch into the next lecture, which is one of the advantages as well. And then also is because they are online, so most of the lectures are recorded. So it gives us an opportunity to go over and over at your own pace to understand it. And also it's actually like very, very, very nice. And I actually enjoy the hybrid process so far.
Thanks, Pere. Emily, is there anything that you want to add to that as well from your experience on the course this year?
Thanks, Jamie. I've actually been really lucky. So I have everything in person because all of my seminars are quite small, which has been great because you've been able to go into UCL, go into the building, experience Bentham House, which is a really, really great place to be. And they also do provide you with a Zoom link, just in case, obviously, sometimes people are unwell or they might unfortunately catch COVID. So there is an option to do it online if you need to. But yeah, I've really, really enjoyed going into Bentham House, so I feel quite lucky that everything's been face-to-face.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, everyone. Next up, we had a few kind of related questions that perhaps, Sarah, you can answer, kind of about application process and numbers. One question was, are applications considered together after the deadline in March or on a rolling basis? Another attendee asked if spaces fill up in particular specialisms, and if that happens, would they be considered for the general LLM? And I can't remember what the other question was. I'll see if I can find the other one while you're answering those ones.
Well, I'm trying to remember the first two. The first one, I think, was whether applications were all held till the 1st of March and then decided together, or whether we decide them on a rolling basis. Well, given the number of applications, I don't think there's any way that we could hold them till the end of March. We decide them on a rolling basis. So as they come in, they go through a system, go for central admissions, then they go to the faculty admissions, then they're sent to faculty, then they're sent to the admissions academics to decide, and then they go back, and then they get eventually sent back to the student. So sorry it takes longer than you would imagine it's going to take, but we do decide them on a rolling basis. I think we have a deadline by which we're meant to decide them by. I can't remember what it is. Jamie might know. It's 5 weeks, perhaps. Jamie will tell me in a minute. The other thing that you asked about, are there limits on each specialism? And the answer to that is no, there are no limits. So we, if we think that you are suitable for a particular specialism, we'll make you an offer for the specialism. And the number of students on each particular specialism varies hugely. So some specialisms may have about 50 students on, and some specialisms may have 2 or 3 students on. But don't worry, the places don't fill up on the specialisms, but do have a think about whether you want to apply for a specialism or keep your LLM general. If you want to do a general LLM, that keeps your options open if you change your mind about what you want to practice in the future. If you want to show that you're particularly dedicated and committed to a particular area of law, then go for a specialism. Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, Sarah. That was another question. A related question was whether a general LLM can be converted into a specialized LLM. It doesn't quite work that way. You need to really think about whether or not you want to have a specialist degree at the point of application, ideally. And that's because when it comes time to choose your modules, you need to choose a certain number of credits from a specialism to be eligible for that specialism. So it's really important. You're going to be choosing your modules just before you start the course. So it's really important that if you do want to do a specialism, that you have applied to and you're on that specialism before you start the course. There are some rare exceptions where perhaps you've applied for the general LLM and maybe after you started the course, you decide that you actually wish that you had a specialist degree instead. There's the possibility for you to change that after you've started, but it's only possible if your module credits align to the requirements for that specialism. So it's really something to think about before you start the course when you're applying about whether or not you want to pursue the general LLM or the specialism. So yeah, and I remembered as well, the other question, Sarah, was just generally about like numbers year on year, if they're roughly the same in terms of total number of enrollments. We've already sort of clarified, we're not looking for a specific number per specialism, but usually the cohort size is about the same every year in terms of total enrollments that we're looking for. Excellent. We've got a couple of questions for Rachel as well. One was, does work in the pro bono clinic count towards SQE requirements if we go on to study the SQE?
The answer is not very simple answer, is it depends. So there are very specific requirements for work counting towards the SQE in terms of the type of work it is. There has to be a solicitor available to sign it off. And you also have to think about the fact that if you're applying for the SQE, you can only submit 4 qualifying work experience placements, and you have to do up to 2 years of full-time equivalent work towards that particular qualification. So if you're thinking about how much time you might actually do on a pro bono placement, over the course of a year, you might be doing, say, or a lot of people don't volunteer in term 3 because they're busy on focusing on exams and assessments, which means they're only volunteering maybe in term 1 and 2. And by the time you've been recruited to the placement, it's probably only half of term 1. So you're perhaps doing 12 weeks of a half day a week of a volunteer placement. If you add that up to full-time equivalent work, that might be sort of a month's worth of work experience. So a lot of people just choose that, say that it's kind of perhaps not the best use of one of their 4 placements to submit that particular opportunity. It doesn't mean that it's impossible, and we kind of have a guidance about what we would need from you if you wanted us to sign it off. But the biggest thing is it sort of depends what placement you're actually placed in. If you're placed at the clinic, we have solicitors here who could sign it off. There are other placements which you might be put in where there are solicitors who could sign off the experience, but there are also other placements where there aren't solicitors who are available to sign it off. So yeah, short answer is it depends, but it's not impossible. It's just whether you actually think it's going to be worth your time.
Excellent, thanks, Rachel. Another question about the Centre for Access to Justice is student involvement in the CAJ by application only, or is anybody welcome to participate?
So anyone is welcome to participate in the activity, but we have each individual opportunity that we offer. We have an application process because there are a limited number of spots for each opportunity, but we have so many opportunities that basically if you're interested in an opportunity, there will be one for you eventually.
Excellent, thank you. Next, we've got a question around career support. Unfortunately, we don't have our laws careers consultant with us today, Stephen Gurman, but you can find more information on the website as well if you'd like to research that. I'll ask maybe Jess or Danielle to just post a link to our careers page. But in the meantime, Sarah, if you feel there's anything you can sort of add to this question, what kind of career support is provided to LLM students, in particular for internationally qualified lawyers?
I can say a little bit about that, and afterwards, the questions about specialisms, I thought might be really nice to hear from the students about whether they're studying specialisms and how they chose their particular modules, because it's always a really interesting issue for applicants to hear about, I think. So meanwhile, careers, we're really lucky because we have a careers consultant who's really experienced in legal careers, knows lots about legal careers, being a solicitor, being a barrister, policy type careers, and you're able to make an appointment with him to talk to him about your career aspirations, has lots of ideas about how to apply for various different roles, provides a newsletter with different roles that are available. He also does various different sessions, workshops on applying for different types of things. And he did a really good session on networking for international students a couple of years ago. I'm not sure whether he still does that, but we're very aware of international students' need for careers advice. So yeah, there's a great resource in the terms of Stephen Gurman, and and if you come to UCL, make an appointment to see him. These students might be able to talk about that as well if they've had some careers advice.
Great, thanks, Sarah. That's helpful as well. We can swing back around to sort of specialism and module choices with Emily and Pere as well. Because one of the questions that has come through too is, do we have the option to customize our LLM course by selecting the modules of our choice? And I think, if I'm right, Emily and Pere, are you both on the general LLM? Is that right? Yeah. So yeah, Emily, if you're happy to talk a bit about why you chose the general LLM and the courses that you chose, and if you have anything to add in careers, feel free to talk about that as well.
I don't have anything to add for careers, unfortunately, but I have heard how helpful Stephen is. So I'm sure it'd be really good to book an appointment. So yeah, as Jamie said, I'm on the general LLM. I wanted to keep my options quite broad, but I do actually do the majority of the law and social justice specialism modules. So I chose my modules quite a long time ago, actually, so I can't, thinking back, but I wanted to do modules kind of based around people. I think I'd like to go into family law, so I chose the children and their rights module, but I wanted to do a range of, so I do, for example, alternative dispute resolution, which is quite different to children and their rights. So I think it's important, if you're doing the general LLM, to choose kind of quite a broad range, and also looking at how you're assessed. So I generally do better in coursework than exams, so I chose all coursework. And just have a really good read of the website. There's so much information, and I think there's also maybe a few articles that they put on the website, so you can have a read around kind of things that you'll be discussing in your lectures. So yeah, there's just so much information on the website.
Thanks, Emily. How about you, Pere? How did you find sort of choosing to do the general LLM and then your eventual module choices?
Okay, so I wanted to do the general LLM because I wanted to keep my options open. So in terms of like selection, actually, I would adopt the word customization, because for me, what I wanted to do was I wanted to put myself in a position where I'm going to be quite versatile and easy to fit into any other fit into like the job market in terms of the area I wanted to like focus in. So I do like dispute resolution a lot. So that's why I take the model international commercial litigation and also arbitration. And then also I take also a model in data privacy and surveillance law, because we all know how relevant that is now. every company is very interested in being data compliant. So it's actually a very topical issue. And so that's the reason why I decided to do the module as well. And also in my research, I am doing my research in international corporate finance. It's quite a stretch, I know, but that's like the opportunity, the width that doing a general LLM gives you. It gives you an opportunity to sort of like diversify your portfolio in terms of, not investments, but yeah, in terms of your experience. And then I would like to add to the careers question. So I'm also an international qualified lawyer. I'm a lawyer in Nigeria. It's the career team has actually been very helpful, and Stephen Gorman particularly. So the thing is, you can actually set up an appointment with him where you get bespoke and tailored advice in terms of where you are, your current position, and then he gives you advice based on that. Based on that position you're in. And also is the fact that you can subscribe to the newsletters and websites, and they always send us updates about training contracts and vacation schemes and all that. So it's actually very helpful for someone who was actually not qualified in the country. You have such a wide range of support. Also, there are careers events in terms of how to customize your CV, the relevant experience you might need to get in the UK to be able to really fit into the job market here. So it's very broad. It's a lot, actually. It's really helpful. So for those who are internationally qualified, there's actually a very, very dedicated team to international students and international qualified professionals.
Actually, Jamie, could I just add to that? I'm glad Pere's picked up a lot of those points, because I think the support we provide in relation to careers goes way beyond what we have there. There are lots of lectures, and Pere, I'm glad you picked a lot of those up, but there are people that are actually involved in the industry, whether you're looking to go in-house, whether you're looking for a job at a large international law firm in different areas of the practice. So there are people that you can speak to. And my sense is, and Emily, I don't know if you can comment on this as well, that most people are very approachable and will actually look to help you. They'll give you advice about how you structure your application, the sort of things that people are looking for. So everyone is very aware that people come to do an LLM for lots of reasons, but one of them is to advance their career.
Excellent, that's really helpful. Thank you, everyone. We also, I think, just to elaborate on what was being said, because there was a question as well about if a specialism is not running, will some of those modules still be available? As we mentioned before, it's likely that some of the modules will still be available. It's just that if there's a specialism that you were interested in applying for that's not running next year, you can still, depending on which modules are available, when we publish that in a few months' time, you can, of course, still select modules that were related to that specialism from those that are running for next year. So there's still, a really good opportunity within the general LLM to be able to take a range of courses. And I think picking up on the research essay component, if you do a specialism, your research essay needs to be in that specialist area. Pere is a really great example of someone who's doing a real range of modules plus a very different research essay topic, which can be, quite interesting if that's something that you want to get out of your LLM. Excellent. Sarah, we've also had a question if we can provide some more information about the part-time or modular flexible LLM program.
Yeah, there are two separate programs. There is either the part-time or the flexible program. If you study part-time, you do 2 45 credit modules in year 1 and 1 45 credit module in year 2, plus your research essay. Or if you don't want to do a full module, you can do 2 half modules. So that's complete. So you complete the course over 2 years. The students on both the part-time and the flexi course are in the same classes as the full-time students. So there is not a separate class for part-time students and flexi students. They attend the same classes. So you need to be aware that you will probably be attending during the day. With the flexi course, you can do as many modules as you like each year, up until the total of 3 times 45 credit, 3 times 4, 45 credit, 4 modules. So if you want to, you could do 2 modules in 1 year, one in the next, take a break for a couple of years, and you have to complete all of your your talk modules, your 345 credit talk modules, plus your research essay within a period of 5 years. But how you spread that out is a matter for you. Again, I just want to make sure that you're aware that the classes are the same classes that the full-time students attend. So you need to make sure that you've got time during the day to attend.
Thank you, Sarah. We've also had some questions about the total number of credits that students are required to take, how sort of module choices are structured. So Sarah, if you could talk a bit more, if they're selecting modules under the general LLM, how many credits do they take? Someone else wanted to know if you can take classes from outside of your specialism, if you are on a specialist degree. And then there was also a question about taking extra credits or auditing courses as well, which are all kind of related, if you're happy to talk through those.
Yeah, I'll try and remember what you've just asked. So generally the LLM is 180 credits. That's 3 45 credit talk modules. Those are a 45 credit module is a full module, or you can make up the number by a combination of 22.5 credit modules, which are half credit, which are half modules, as long as you do a total of, and I can't do the maths, whatever 3 times 145 is, somebody will tell me, of talk modules, plus you need to do a 45 credit research essay. So a quarter of the course is a research essay, and that's in an area of your choosing. Now, if you're doing a specialism, at least 60 credits have to be in that specialism area. So you have to do at least 1.5 modules in that area, and you have to write your research essay in that area. You asked about, what else was there?
Then whether or not there's the opportunity to take extra top module classes or audit classes as well.
Extra classes, my goodness. I think you'll be really busy just doing the talk module classes that you need to do for your LLM, and you wouldn't have time to do extra classes on top of that. Or if you want to do extra things on top of your LLM, I would suggest that you do an extracurricular activity like mooting or something like that. We don't let you audit other modules, so you can't go and sit in other classes.
Excellent, thank you, Sarah. I'm just looking at the questions again. Oh yeah, we did have one question. Back to the application process again, on whether there are any interviews in the application process, or are places offered solely based on the application?
There are no interviews. All the places are offered based on your written application.
Thank you, Sarah. Excellent. So I'm just looking at the time. I realize we only have a sort of minute left before the session finishes. I can see still there's a really long list of questions that were submitted that we haven't been able to get to live. So again, I'll ask Danielle or Jess just to post our email address for the admissions team in the chat. So please make sure if you've got a bespoke question that wasn't answered today, that you do get in touch with us by email. We'll be very happy to answer any questions that you have, particularly if you're still in the sort of point of deciding whether or not to submit an application and you need anything else clarified about the course. But yeah, I think before we close, it'd be nice to hear from the panelists sort of one last time, any kind of final bits of advice for applicants in progress or those considering joining the course. So perhaps shall we start with the students? Pere, if you'd like to go first.
Yes. I wanted to also add this at the time I was talking about career support, is the fact that if you decide to do your LLM at UCL, excuse me, you're assigned a mentor actually. So your mentor is your go-to person for everything, career, person, and other advice you might need. So, well, the advice I would give is that it's actually been a very great experience, considering I was coming from a totally different country and jurisdiction per se. But UCL has been able to give me the required integration that I actually needed. The courses have been really helpful. And also there was also the provision of an extra course in academic legal writing, which I found very helpful, considering there were quite some differences in the way I was used to writing essays and questions. So UCL has actually been very instrumental in my career growth and progression. So it's worth giving a thought to.
Thank you so much, Pere. That's really helpful additional information. How about you, Emily? Anything that you'd want to add for the attendees today?
Thanks, Jamie. I would just really recommend applying if you haven't done so already. I think it's a really, really great place to be. As Graham said earlier, approachable. There's never anything, nothing is ever too much. And yeah, I think it's going too quickly. I want to stay for longer. So yeah, I would really, really recommend applying if you haven't done so already.
Thanks, Emily. How about you, Rachel? Any final thoughts?
Do pro bono if you come.
Just a simple plug. Yep.
Thanks, Rachel. To the point.
Yeah.
You guys will ask me next, aren't you?
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah. Yeah.
So I want some things I haven't mentioned, which are the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies. So if you come and study with us, you get to be a member of the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, which is one of the best libraries in the world, I'm told. You also are able to go and study in the Student Centre, which is an amazing brand new building. And there is, of course, also the Law Library, which is in the main campus. So you have a lot of opportunities to study in different libraries. And when you're doing that, you have London, where you can have lots and lots and lots of fun. And the most amazing thing about the course, in my view, is the students. The student body is amazing. There are students from every single country that you can think of on the course, and they are all already really high achieving law students. So you'll make fantastic friends, and you'll have a fantastic time that you will never forget whilst you're at UCL.
Thanks, Sarah. And how about you, Graham? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I actually picked up some of the sort of tip questions, and as Sarah mentioned earlier, I sit on the panel reviewing applications, and if I can just give one piece of advice, it is surprising to me how many applications are made that don't appear to have gone in and looked at the courses that people are wanting to study, or thought about the academics that are teaching those courses and what interests them. And when you're reading these applications, I mean, obviously you expect people to be, very energized about coming, and the very least you expect them to do is to have gone in and looked at, the courses that we have to offer. So when you're making your personal statement, if you can connect that in some way and at least show some evidence that you're aware of, how we teach, how we approach the subjects, what we teach, and why you're interested in coming to study at UCL, that really does make a difference.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you again to all of the panelists for your time today, for your engaging presentations. I hope those who have attended have found all of the information really useful. Many thanks as well to Danielle and Jess, Thomas and Jane in the background, furiously answering questions that have come through. But we hope that you found today's session useful. Of course, if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us by email. And yes, we look forward to hopefully seeing your applications and seeing you on the course in the coming year. So thank you all again, and see you soon.